Not mind me. I'm gonna get the word out and then get this started. Cause it's been a busy day. We had almost a foot of snow out here, and it's gonna snow tonight. So I'm already in a bit of a surly mood. But welcome to the Bonnet Chronicles. I'm your host, Kalari GXC, and let me just get the word fired up. All right. Get the word out to people and then get fired off. It might not be a long one today, guys. I'm going to be a bit honest. I almost didn't make it again, but I want to keep consistent with my stream schedule, especially since I knocked Tuesdays off. I don't want to keep missing days because I'm not feeling good. And last week I had another cold hit me. Even though I'm taking a shit ton of vitamin C, apparently it's not enough to keep my immune system from giving me a cold. So it's been touch and go, but I am definitely back. I'm gonna try to keep doing the Sundays in Salona. The method without the camera did work, so it is what it is. I'm gonna try that. But tonight was a night of baking. We got some starter dough for some pizzas made a couple of days ago. So I got kiddos done so that he wouldn't pace. And then I'm gonna make Axiom Wolves and Mines later. It's just been busy, y'all. And I am glad to be here. I'm glad that I'm feeling a bit better. I still a little congested, but it's nothing as bad as it was last week. So I should be fired up and ready to go all weekend. Tomorrow's YouTube live where I react to the heifer because she's been on some stuff, including her I just got paid cheeseburger mukbang. Ugh. And some other crap she said about Ramadan and being a Muslim. But you aren't here for that. You're here for my political commentary, so let's get to it. And we're going to start with the coup that is going on in our house currently, or the coup that's trying to be started in our house, with Muppet Green, as I like to call her, the idiot from Georgia who does not deserve the seat that she's currently taken. So please look into the people running against her. I believe there's a young man that is running against her, and you need to give him a look-see because this heifer isn't it. Apparently, she doesn't like that the Speaker of the House, or as I like to call him, that Hydra agent, thwarted a government shutdown for a few more months yet and gave some concessions for the. Hey, Beans, good to see you, hun. Gave some concessions so that we wouldn't have a shutdown. Because even Speaker Johnson realizes what a blow this would be for his party for them to have our government shut completely down over their incompetence and inability to govern. But according to Muppet Green, who was on X, and I pulled this from a news article because I don't go on that site. When it becomes Twitter again, if it ever becomes Twitter again, I still have my account, but right now it's collecting digital dust. But I always love it when our news publications pull these BS moves like this, highlighting her idiocy and showcasing the clapback. I loved how, oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? He's representative out in California clapped her back talking about how a broken clock is right every once in a while. But the DNC War Room just said, we approve this message to Marjorie Taylor Greene's deciding to call our Republican majority is a complete failure. You think? Whenever you hold anything, it means the restriction of people's rights, the rollback of protections for voting, and the uptick in stuff like violence, terrorism, domestic terrorism by those gun-toting homosexuals in our country. It is a complete and utter mess, the crap we put up with, pretending like the Republican Party in its current state or any of the states in the last few decades have been on the board. Let's face it, the only thing they're good at is causing wars and taking women's rights and anybody who's black, brown, or doesn't qualify for their normal society. Why are we letting these people run our government? They should not have a House majority. And one of these doofuses, he's about to resign. I don't have his name off the top of my head because, like I said, y'all, it was freaking busy today. But it was representative, I think, out west, a Republican who is retiring now, thus making their majority slimmer again because they just got rid of the great pretender George Santos too. So it's like people need to realize that these idiots do not know what they're doing. They're scrounging this year from the Supreme Court's trying to rule against IVF, then realizing We're supposed to be the party of women making babies. We can't have these rules. To this nonsense. Now, they already had a coup to get rid of the speaker before McCarthy. I forget his name, but I remember that it took him 15 fucking tries to get it. And Matt Gertz and them decided he was a bit too conceding to the Democrats. So what can we do to make him know that we're unsatisfied? And they ousted him. Now the Hydra agent's in charge. And he is trying his damnedest, like a normal party leader would, to keep things together and not have a government shutdown, because it'll fuck up people's jobs, people's income, and everything else. And that in November would be remembered. But Muppet Green, who thinks she's in a cushy spot and her fealty to 45 protects her, is now trying to pull what Gertz did against the other asshole, and now going after this doofus. And you know what? Let him fight. As far as I'm concerned, oh, McConnell's leaving, but that's Senate, and I'm glad. We still have a slim majority for the Democrats in the Senate, and this is why I said every single election matters. So many people are like, I don't want to think about politics. What's it matter? They repealed Dobbs? Roe versus Wade? It is ridiculous. And I agree, Beans. It doesn't matter who they put in charge, unless they're completely loyal to 45, which will alienate him with the Republicans that aren't, or her. I doubt it'll be a her, but you know what I mean. Or somebody like the Hydra agent who's in charge right now, who's trying to walk that fine line of hardline conservative theocrat and realizing that it's his job to keep shit together. They are just going to eat each other. And you know what? If our functioning Congress wasn't in jeopardy, I'd let this play out like a fucking governmental soap opera. But we are in dangerous times with this. And it drives me nuts, because to a lot of people, this is normal. It's not normal. This should not be going on. But we have, for some reason, idiocy when it comes to this. And our media is loving it. They're eating it up. In fact, we have this article here. Let me get this up. No, not the Florida stuff. That was 2 weeks ago. Where they pretty much talk about how Marjorie Greene is trying to seize power. And my brain goes, this isn't normal. She filed a motion to oust Mike Johnson as a speaker. And McCarthy was the one before him. And thank you, Beans. That's what you meant. Johnson, to me, has always been problematic. In my react to Pete Buttigieg reacting to his insidious co-signing on this weird patriot book that attacks homosexuality, and his being on board at first before he became Speaker of the House with attacking Secretary Buttigieg's sexuality. And now all of a sudden, Mike Johnson wants to act like he didn't say that, and he didn't read the book, and all the lies that Republicans do when they're backed against their own words and beliefs. Well, now, because he thwarted that government shutdown, saving the country almost $1 trillion, you're not going to get a pat on the back from me, because you shouldn't have been Speaker of the House in the first fucking place, as far as I'm concerned. But it is good for those whose job security, whose funds and everything else is tied to the government staying in place. The government isn't just people who we elect. Plenty of workers, from post office employees to state employees who get paid through the government for health facilities and other state facilities, like even penitentiaries and stuff, they would be in jeopardy from an actual shutdown in regards to funds. We don't need that right now. So I will say I'm glad that the House could at least thwart it this time. But the constant looming threat of a shutdown is getting on my nerves. And it's only a couple of months. So what, are they trying to bank on November? So that you can try to blame President Biden when the House is currently led by the Republicans? I don't fucking think so. But it says that Speaker Johnson, who's from Louisiana and a Republican, has been Speaker for 5 months. He's taken over for Kevin McCarthy, who was ousted from the top job under a similar process. It's not clear how the House would act on her motion, which requires a majority vote to remove Speaker. Green, from Georgia, did not file the motion as privilege, which would force the vote within 2 days, but instead a regular motion which could be referred to a committee where it would likely languish. That's how stupid Muppet is. But I'm glad, because we don't need these shenanigans right now. We need a functioning fucking Congress. Green told reporters, which you know this is just grandstanding, she's trying to appeal to 45 and it's fucking sickening. But she said the motion to vacate was more of a warning than a pink slip, because her threats mean something. Like I said, Deb Dingle from my neck of the woods already threatened your ass heifer. You're just lucky we can't throw hands in Congress, so I would have ran, because people wanted me to run for office. I keep reminding people, I am mentally not stable, but I'm willing to take a seat if I can throw hands with this bitch. Like 3.5 weeks in the chamber without a speaker when McCarthy was ousted. So, was he her ally? Because I thought she was on Team Gertz and Bobber. But they're always back and forth with the frenemies bullshit. I'm not saying it won't happen in 2 weeks or it won't happen in a month or who knows, but I'm saying the clock has started. It's time for our conference to choose a new speaker. She has also not disclosed the motion with the turd 45. There goes the Hydra leader. Look at him looking all like a blank man. Either way, what's the most ridiculous about everything, what's going on in our current state of affairs with our Congress, is that we elected these doofuses to be these stupid. We are the ones that put these fuckers into power, and we are the ones that need to vote them out because they're a waste of our time. The House left for 2 weeks in recess Friday and won't consider the motion until it returns in April. It's like they get their spring break too. Kiddo's spring break started today, and he doesn't go back till April 1st. Raj Shah, a former spokesman for Johnson, said, well, a spokesman for Johnson, not a former, said the speaker's focus is on governing, dropping that shade, securing our border, strengthens our national blah, blah, blah. I'm sick of this border shit. It's just a way for the bigots to be a bigot. There's nothing wrong with our borders. People are allowed to come here and seek asylum. We need to hire justices that'll get them through the system faster and send those who cannot get through the system back faster. But we don't want that. We can't have our talking points that, oh, all the violent rapists and bigots and all that other stuff are coming over the border to take our lives. Even the young lady that they tried to use and Muppet Green tried to shout out during the president's speech at the State of the Union said, her dad said, don't use my daughter as a political talking point. People are tired of their dead loved ones being used as a tug of war against this administration. It's bullshit. If we vacate this speaker, we'd end up with a Democrat, which, like I said, Hakeem Jeffries is waiting. He's waiting, and I guarantee you he could do a better job than the Hydra agent. I made a promise to this country that we would not end up with a Democrat speaker, Getz said. Fuck you. You need to be taken down for the trafficking stuff. I'm so sick of Gertz acting like he's normal when he was trafficking underage girls. And I can't believe we're still not like running. This should be everyday news until he gets convicted. But we gotta say alleged so that we don't get sued. Fuck that guy. Fuck everybody who treats him like he's normal. And welcome to the chat, Grandamere. And hugs to you too, dear. Thank you for the lurk. I am so aggravated with this. And then you gotta have Republican unity, which they don't have. There's no loyalty. You either swear fealty to the criminal who was still trying to pretend like his run for president is normal when he's got 91 freaking indictments against him, or this cavalcade of fools who think that somehow they can use Trump to gain power themselves. It is a fucking mess in the GOP, and I am so freaking sick of us trying to act like anything they do is remotely normal. Gates' move against McCarthy led to the first time in history a House Speaker was removed in the middle of a session. Way to go. Y'all are gonna flood the historical books with idiocy. It sparked a week of chaos. The thin Republican majority, they scrambled to find a replacement before settling on Johnson. It's like the kid last in kickball. Some moderate Democrats have said they would have voted to save Johnson. Of course, he's a useful tool. if someone attempted to oust him, not for love of the current speaker, but to avoid another fight over the replacement that would bring all business to a halt. Because the Democrats are pragmatic most of the time, and they don't need a fucking shutdown. Representative Tom Suozzi from New York said he would be amongst the Democrats to vote for Johnson. This is a comedy routine. The idea that they're trying to kick the speaker out for trying to keep the government open is absurd. Yes, it is. I'm fed up with it, and I will vote to keep him as speaker. So Johnson knew, even though he is not popular amongst his ilk, I'm just going to call him the ilk, he knows that the Democrats will work with him because they know that we ain't got time for this. The vulnerable Representative Susan Wild of Pennsylvania said she too was leaning towards rescuing Johnson, though hasn't made... Oh, she's another Susan Collins. Get the fuck out of here. No wonder your seat's in jeopardy. I do not think Speaker Johnson has been a model speaker or serves as a model for future speakers. Having said that, I absolutely want us to get work done. And the last thing in the world I want is another 2 or 3 week hiatus, because it's really hard to imagine who would be next in line. Now that makes sense, but she's still wishy-washy. I can't imagine the Democrats would let this motion to vacate be successful. Of course not. Mike Lawler, a Republican in New York, called several times Friday for Democrats to join in saving Johnson. He could fuck right off. Another Republican from Tennessee, Tim Burchett, voted to oust McCarthy, said he wouldn't vote to remove Johnson. No, he's not lied to me. Okay, whatever. Ralph Norman of South Carolina remained non-committal because he's a pussy. Green has been dropping hints about her plan. Yeah, she was all over social media acting like a Billy badass because she thinks she's going to seize power somehow. She's an idiot, and we are up against a lot of idiots. All because homeboy wanted to avoid a government shutdown. And like I said, had it not been a Hydra agent that did this act, I'd be more in praise of him, but I still don't trust him. I don't trust the way he treats the LGBTQ. I don't like the weird way he deals with his kid and that app they have to check to make sure you're not doing anything indecent. It's fucking weird the way the conservatives did. But they passed a $1.2 trillion spending package to avoid the shutdown. Passed the final 6 bills needed, and now heads to our Senate. Will likely pass late Friday or over the weekend. Government funding runs out at 12:01 on Saturday morning. If the weekend shutdown, it would have happened if they hadn't passed it, would be disruptive for most Americans. More Democrats than Republicans supported the bill, which passed 286 to 134. The minority party has repeatedly carried government spending bills and funding because the GOP, who I need to remind you are running the House into the fucking ground, do not care about saving our government, do not care about stability. They care about grandstanding and seizing power any which way they can, which would be bad for all of us. Under no circumstances can we tolerate a government shutdown. Hakeem Jeffries, who should be the freaking leader of the House as far as I'm concerned, but he's the Democratic minority leader, he said in a news conference on Thursday, we have a responsibility to make sure that our government is well funded and the 6 appropriations bills do so in a way that takes care of the health, safety, and education and economic well-being of the American people. But, of course, the conservatives backlashed in the House. It has ultra-conservative lawmakers rallied against the bipartisan deal. Those members assailed the deal passed last Friday for not clearing the way for deeper spending cuts and GOP priorities on border and migration policies. When you need to have an enemy, when you need that enemy to be vulnerable people looking for a better way for themselves and their family, risking it all to cross in and seek asylum here, you have no better party than the Republican Party, because they are determined to let hate hold on to their hearts and pass their hate on to innocent people who just want to live. Speaker Mike Johnson said, House Speaker Mike Johnson, those conservatives have said, should have threatened a government shutdown to extract conservative wins from the Democrats. So they want him to use a shutdown as extortion, basically. You're not going to shake down the government that wants to function. But Johnson and swaths of other House Republicans have often said shutting down the government was not an option. Duh, it's not a smart move, point blank. It's total lack of backbone and lack of leadership and total failure by Republican leadership. There's no other way to describe it. Chip Roy from Texas. You know, your governor in Texas likes to ship migrants like they're dolls because he doesn't want to handle his job as governor of Texas. Y'all are a bunch of cowards and talk about leadership. Is leadership being cruel to other human beings because they didn't happen to be born on this soil? Or maybe like your ancestors, the level of cruelty that owned my ancestors and then rehomed and basically slaughtered my other set of ancestors, putting them in your little Christian schools because native blood, what's that? They can't learn under their tribes, right? Of course, 45 advisor from the war room, the tumor that's known as Steve Bannon, said the bill's an abomination. He's an abomination. I can't believe he hasn't aided himself with Sif taint yet. Of course, Muppet Green again, who motioned to vacate. He faced pushback from conservatives because the GOP leaders broke their promise to lawmakers would have 72 hours reviewed legislation before voting on it. So you didn't have enough time to realize that shutting down the government wasn't good and that we needed to do this? Okay, whatever. Don't vote on something you haven't read, says Republican Ralph Norman of South Carolina. Would you buy a toaster without reading the detail? It's a fucking toaster. Why do you need a detail on the toaster? It's South Carolina. I'm going to leave it at that. I lived there briefly, so I know what I'm talking about. He needs to read all the stuff on the toaster to understand before he buys it. Okay, whatever. Norman noted that afterwards that a car would have been a more fitting analogy, of course. You know, you can't use brain power and be the sitting representative, right? Fucking idiots. Fucking idiots. There he goes. There's the pillar of wisdom right there that thinks that you need instructions for a toaster. For what it's worth, 72 hours wouldn't have likely changed many hearts or minds. No doubt because they wanted to shut down because they thought it would affect the president negatively without realizing that a lot of us understand civics and know that it would have been the House jamming us up. And a lot of yous would be out of work sooner than later. Let's see. 40 House conservatives circulated a letter urging fellow Republicans to vote against the final spending product if it did not include their policy demands, including Representative Tom Macy of Kentucky, and he argued he needed 72 hours to help people know what's in the bill. What's in the bill, actually? Despite conservative protests, Republican leaders touted several of their own victories in the bipartisan compromise. Amongst them, Republican negotiators championed for an increase of funding for the Border Patrol and ICE. Can't stand this. For the detention bed capacity for migrants at the southern border. Perhaps one of their significant wins was halting fund for the UNRWA, a United Nations relief agency that's providing aid for Palestinians in Gaza. Of course they did. Of course they did. But everybody wants to blame the fucking president for the shit that our Congress is currently doing to stymie aid to the people in need in Palestine. I'm going to get to that deeper soon as well. And Speaker Johnson, the Hydra agent, wanted Netanyahu to come and talk to our Congress, which I hope they shut down because we don't need that evil in our Congress. Democrats who voted against the bill balked at the elimination of funding for the aid, of course, because we want to do what we can. But we are literally up against a series of checks and balances that a lot of people are too stupid on the surface to realize. Democrats were able to brag about their own wins, including a new $1 billion investment for child care at Head Start, an early child development program for low-income families. Additionally, Democrats secured new funding for Alzheimer's research and cancer research, which is near and dear to my heart because of the things that went through my family, and I'm glad that they secured the funding. The Democrats also celebrated what was not included in the bill, beating back Republican demand for Conservative Party add-ons, such as Senate Appropriations Committee Chair Patty Murray. Oh, Senate Appropriations Chair Patty Murray said in a statement that Democrats defeated outlandish cuts, which would have been a gut punch for American families and our economy. So that's what's going on in our current state of affairs in our Congress. It is a dogfight between people who don't want to get shit done and the people who do. And I know people are, oh, Tim, you're biased. You're a Democrat. I'm a pragmatist. If a Republican wants to get the job done, which the Hydra agent is doing, I don't mind him doing his job. But what I'm not going to accept is this constant influx of, well, what can we do about it? You can vote. You can act like your vote matters, and you can vote for somebody who wants to get the job done no matter what party affiliation they're in. We're currently at a standstill with people who don't even know the difference between an analogy with a toaster and an analogy with a fucking car. And it is on us to do our due diligence and vote people in who want to work across the board to make our nation stronger and more prosperous for a future where we're not fucking dealing with religious theocracy. Because I'm going to tell you again, a lot of us wouldn't last under that shit. A lot of us would be thrown to the wayside if not taken out. And that is not hyperbolic. I love history. I've been studying history for over 30 years. And I can tell you, as an amateur historian, the chips are falling. You see it in a state-by-state basis. Laws against people who are different, whether they're LGBTQ, women's rights, black rights to vote. Anybody who doesn't qualify as a straight, white, Christian American, we are under the gun if we don't use our power to vote. And even the straight white Christian females, unless you plan to be broodmares, or if you're too old to be a broodmare and you think you're just sticking it to the young chippies, you will end up really in a bad way, because they don't even care if you survive giving birth at this point. A regular old Handmaid's Tale, and some of you think you'll be the cute ones at the top. You won't. You'll be the broodmare. And what's troubling is how influential our media has been with shifting the fucking narrative about what's going on with these shutdowns and what's going on with this ridiculous matchup in November. They're calling it a rematch. It's going to be a slaughter if I have my way. Because there is no way I'm going to let 45 get back into the presidency. But Leonard Leo, Koch's network, pours millions into groups prepping for a potential second 45 administration, which is crazy to me. They really do bank on that motherfucking winning in November. And we need to come together and make sure the rejection we gave him almost 4 years ago is louder. More of us need to show up and say, nah, because we lost family. We lost friends. We've seen the destabilization. We watched you give money to people who already have more in abundance while crushing the souls of those of us just trying to keep our heads above water. We cannot allow these networks to sway us into this fascist thing, because you know that if 45 gets into power again, it's game over for our voting system. Like I said, he has already praised Xi Jinping for making himself president for life. You don't think that doofus who owes tons of money right now, claiming he has billions, but won't show the receipts for that, and a lot of people around him claiming that he doesn't have the money to put up, getting outside detractors who think they're going to have his ear if he becomes president again, funded some of his fuck shit. This is crazy to me. And it's not just the Koch networks playing this fuck shit either. But they are willing to put $55 million in the groups linked to trying to get this fucker a second term. Because he'll be a one-hit wonder as far as I'm concerned. But they think they can. With contributions from former high-level administration appointees, all those people who took PPE loans, like Munich, who's trying to buy TikTok. And like I said, I don't give a fuck about TikTok, but we need to stop warring with these young people's websites, especially if you want those young people to fucking vote for you. With contributions from them, they want 100 conservative organizations to group together as Project 2025 and transition over, which is not going to happen. But you know, this fucker right here, who heads up Koch Media, these same fuckers who think they're going to take over and put Trump back into power, this is what we are up against. And there are way too many people being nonchalant about the amount of money and other stuff that they are willing to put into to make sure that this man leads us into the right wing utopia they want us to be in. It's dangerous times to be apathetic. It's dangerous times to sleep on your right to vote. And another thing, apparently, and this comes from a spout from Christopher Boozy. Let's get rid of this asshole's picture. Because we know they're going to funnel money into Trump's thing. We know why they're going to funnel money into Trump's thing. And honestly speaking, it's my job to make sure that those of you who consider yourselves pragmatists understand what's at stake and how much they're willing to put in to totally destroy our democracy. But we're going to go back to Spoutable real quick because NBC decided to hire former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel to contribute on NBC News and MSNBC. It's all a game to these fuckers. They want a horse race so badly that they are willing, even though they call themselves more liberal elite, which has always been bullshit, to let these fuckers have an influential voice. That's why I said I stopped watching traditional media almost 7 years ago after I seen how they kept normalizing 45 and his antics. And I have not looked back because I see the games they're playing. Most of them are owned by wealthy white businessmen who only want guys like Trump who will keep their pockets fat while squeezing the rest of America dry for them. They don't understand that a stabilized economy requires those at middle and lower class to earn enough income so that we can fuel your economy. Because it's not you fucking wealth hoarders that are doing it. It's the backs of the American people who work their ass off, who buy stuff, who keep the consumer trade flowing. While you price gouge us, because you run the markets, from the grocery to the stock markets. While you run our insurance and health industries into the fucking ground. Nickel and diamond every patient until we cannot afford it anymore. This is what we are fucking up against. And so many people want to look away and say, oh, what's the problem with having diverse voices? Is it really diverse voices when this person who was ousted by 45 in the first fucking place because she wasn't deeply feudal enough to him, but still loyal to the party who wants to restrict her rights as a woman, wants to restrict my rights as a black woman, and wants to restrict anybody who doesn't look, act, or play like them? Why do we keep normalizing this? It doesn't make sense. And then you got this on top of the heels of the vice president, VP Harris, making a monumental trip to Puerto Rico. And I'm going to probably wrap up tonight with my thoughts on some of the shit in this article because it cheesed me off, y'all. When I say that the amount of bullshit that people are willing to put on this administration for stuff they have absolutely no control over, it's flabbergasting to me. But this is courtesy of AOL News, and it reads, VP Harris, it should be, VP Kamala Harris, visits Puerto Rico for the first time as vice president. I guess it would have been redundant, but I would have put the VP up first. Vice President Kamala Harris arrived in Puerto Rico early Friday to embark on the first visit to the U.S. territory since being sworn in 3 years ago. Here you can see VP Harris. According to the office, the purpose of the trip was to highlight President Joe Biden's commitment to supporting Puerto Rico's recovery following hurricanes, earthquakes, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, she didn't throw paper towel at them like 45 did, so everybody's clutching their pearls. With special focus in promoting the administration's investments on the island's infrastructure and economic recovery initiatives, which there have been a lot of them put forward, even though a lot of Americans have been using Puerto Rico to fucking tax dodge. Her 5-hour trip included a visit to the area town of Canovas that received federal housing funds dispersed by the Biden administration to rebuild homes for 6,300 families island-wide after the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in 2017. We are making a difference, Vice President Harris said in a speech delivered outside the home of octogenarian Canovas residents that were ravaged by the hurricane and rebuilt with federal funds. The new home will be able to withstand future hurricanes and use solar energy, which is great for our environment. The Biden administration has invested a total of $140 billion in Puerto Rico across multiple sectors, including education, disaster response, Harris said in her speech. She also emphasized in investments in small business, entrepreneurs, and infrastructure, including renewable energy initiatives. There's so much more work to do, Vice President Harris said. She also commemorated the 151st anniversary of the abolition of slavery in Puerto Rico when it was under Spanish rule, alongside community leaders and artists of San Juan, dedicated to celebrating the island's cultural heritage and its African influence. Because a lot of people forget that Puerto Rico has both Spanish, Portuguese influence, and African influence, which a lot in the Caribbean is spread out. Also, what's going on in Haiti really does need to be looked at, but I'm going to save that for next week because I'm still doing a lot of digging in on what's going on there. And my heart's breaking because a lot of innocent people there and in Gaza are still dying under shit that had nothing to do with them, and it's pissing me off. But since Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory and not a state, people living in the island can't vote for presidential elections, even though they are U.S. citizens by birth. So if they move into the mainland, they can vote, but when they're on the island, they can't, which makes no sense. But until Puerto Rico applies for statehood, they're stuck. They can be, because they're a territory, funded by us. They can come and vote in certain primaries, but they still don't have the political power that they deserve as far as I'm concerned. And it's not just because I have family that lives there and works there. It's because it is the right thing to do for all of our territories, including Guam, including the Virgin Islands. We have several territories that have influential primary power, but no real voting power. And we need to work on that if we're going to still keep them as territories. The Democratic primary in Puerto Rico is scheduled for April 28th. We already had ours here. Joe Biden won handedly here in Michigan, thank goodness. But the turd also won his primary here, so it is very dangerous. The Republican primary is held April 21st there. I don't care about that. Close to 6 million Puerto Ricans live in the U.S. mainland, mainly in competitive states like Florida and Pennsylvania. Biden-Harris supporters hope that tout in the winds of the Biden administration in Puerto Rico can influence Latino voters of Puerto Rican heritage who live in the U.S. mainland and can register to vote in presidential elections, which I hope so. Charlie Rodriguez, the president of the Democratic Party in Puerto Rico, told the news that the vice president's visit as a reiteration of policies established by the president as he stepped into the White House, staying focused on Puerto Rico during his term, which President Biden did keep his word. He said he was not going to let Puerto Rico languish. So you would think that that would translate. But as we get further, you'll see more often than not, people in Puerto Rico don't always see how decisions made in Congress and the White House affect their daily lives, Rodriguez said, adding that under President Biden administration, investments in infrastructure, economic recovery has allowed for the revitalization of roads and some decaying buildings, and ongoing reconstruction of the electrical grid, and the expansion of federal nutrition programs and education funds. It's what happens when your president wants to get the work done. These have had extraordinary impact, he added. This is why we have to continue to spread that message. And this came after the VP Harris visit, came after First Lady Jill Biden has visited Puerto Rico, along with aiding women's health and other jobs that she has done as the First Lady. But, and we're going to get to this because it has to be said, there were protests. Dozens of Puerto Ricans, like Joseline Velasquez, said for the group Jornada se abracan las promesas, first gathered near Coronado in San Juan and blasted the Biden administration for its handling of Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Because apparently People want to still try to act like President Biden can do it all, can stop a war that has nothing really directly to do with us right now, while we're still trying to get our Congress in order and trying on a domestic front to not let our nation fall apart. Joe Biden is supposed to stop everything and end the war between the Israeli and Hamas groups. I don't know any other world leader who's been raked over the coals as much for shit that's not going on in his own backyard than Joe Biden. And these protesters don't understand the intricate nuances of having both a House and Senate who continuously fight against any humanitarian aid, any efforts to put forth a ceasefire. Our president is not a king. He is not a kingmaker. He cannot just make decisions based on other countries when he is trying to hold his country together. And he is bound by the checks and balances so that nobody in our political sphere has overwhelming majority power. You have to realize that the president has drafted notes for a ceasefire in Gaza, has drafted stuff to spread aid, and was trying to work with the UN. Our House has shut it down. Our majority conservative Supreme Court has a voice to shut it down. And our Congress, which is a slim Democratic majority, is the only voice trying to keep us doing what we can to help the Palestinian people. But some of you don't want to think on that level. Some of you don't want to act like you're versed enough in civics to understand the intricate nuances and why the president can't just rip off his suit with a Superman cape and step himself in. Granted, we have been able to give more aid to the Ukrainian war, which is another unjust war being launched by Putin. And need I remind you that both Russia and China have vetoed any type of ceasefire going on in Palestine and Israel right now. But y'all don't want to talk about that. You want to ding this administration for not doing enough. But what the fuck are you doing? I am so heated that these people and this media want to try to put this all on President Biden and VP Harris's shoulders. And I'm not sorry to say that we cannot bear the brunt of what's going on in the world at all times, even as members of the UN. There's only so much we can do when our Congress will not work with this current president to provide a strong voice for or against either side. Now, I know our president said he stands with Israel for the fact that hostages was taken, but he is not a fan of Netanyahu. He wants to help the innocent Palestinians whose lives are being upended and destroyed by this war, but he does not want to aid Hamas, who is the cause by taking those hostages. It is not a black and white situation. Yet people want to pout, stomp their feet, and weigh in like it's such an easy thing for America to step in. And the only way for us to physically step into this and end the conflict would be to declare another war. And we don't need World War III right now, because I don't think any of us would survive that. Point blank, the problem with everybody who wants to protest this administration, wants to blame this administration for what's going on in Gaza, for what's going on in the Ukraine, but look past the people who are actually pulling the puppet strings of all of this, who want to ding an administration who has been busting their ass to take over for 4 years of incompetence from 45 and get us moving towards a more prosperous and secure future. And what, usher in actual fascism and theocracy? I don't know what more I could say to people who actually care about voting. But I want those of you who are apathetic, who think, nah, it doesn't matter if I vote. It's not me directly affected, so why should I care? To understand that blaming this administration for shit out of their hands and ignoring the hard work that they've been doing for the last 4 years is insane to me. There will be no peaceful transition if 45 gets power again. There will be no safety for those of us who consider ourselves educated, who are othered or different by this administration and beyond. But there will be carnage. There will be lives lost. And this is not just being hyperbolic. This is the reality of allowing administration like 45s, to seize power again. And it is on us, those of us who can vote, those of us who think we're in the political know, to set aside the pouting and the stomping because we don't always get our way when voting. But we get a stable country when we vote and people want to get the job done. Now, I know I started a bit late, y'all, and I'm about to wrap this up a little bit early because I got my oven on. I want to get Action Wolf and my dinner started too. I just want to thank everybody who's put up with me with the house scares, who have been supporting the book. We are over 200 ebooks sold, over 150 paperbacks sold, and given away more than 50 to friends and family. And I've got a bunch of books that just got brought here before the snow fell. We just got to get them signed. We're going to be doing a big giveaway soon because the numbers on YouTube have been going up. I am so excited for the future, and I just want to thank every one of y'all who have made this possible. And I promise you next week will be a full hour. Fingers crossed this weather starts to clear up because I'm ready for spring. I'm ready to start planting my vegetables. But other than that, I just hope that you all take care, have a great weekend, and just make sure that if your primary hasn't happened yet, or if anything that's going on in your neck of the woods voting wise come up, do your part. Especially if you have absentee ballots. There is absolutely no reason not to do it. But once again, I'm going to wrap this up. Beans, if you're in FFG's chat later on, I will see you. She probably started already because I think it said 7. But either way, I'm going to wrap this up. I will see you tomorrow if you're not too busy or working, because I will be going live at 1 on YouTube for my Saturday Bonnet Live Reacts. But either way, this has gone too long enough, and I'm going to get to cooking. I'll see y'all soon.